Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between Michael K Vaughan and myself, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we've wasted our youths. And that won't apply specifically today to the comic book that we're talking about, because the comic we're talking about today is relatively brand new. No youths have been wasted on it. But it's Conan. And Mike has been reading Conan for all of his life, and so have I. Reading it and loving it, including in comic book versions. I was skeptical at first when I learned that Marvel Comics was going to do a comic book adaptation of Conan the Barbarian, and my skepticism lasted for a little while because, I hate to say it, but I'm not a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith's artwork in those original issues of Conan the Barbarian 50 years ago. I'm not a big fan of him in his Jack Kirby phase. It was only once he started to morph into his own version of art that I started being a fan of the story. And then John Buscema took over the artwork. Still being written by Roy Thomas, who Mike and I completely agree on the greatness of Conan, and we are also suckers who will go wherever Conan is dangled in front of us. You want to give us a new novel, we'll read it. You want to give us a new comic book, we'll read it. If there's a new movie, we'll certainly see it. Even though mostly disappointments lie along those paths, we'll still do it. One of the ways in which I think we might disagree is that I think Roy Thomas is the best writer of Conan, including Robert E. Howard, which I know he's not going to agree with. But those issues were great. And for me, I read comics for the artwork, not for the writing. Although Roy Thomas's writing is terrific, I usually read them for the artwork. If the artwork is bad, I will usually drop a book, even if the writing is good. And John Buscema was a great comic book artist. He, I think, was much stronger when he was doing either pure science fiction, like he did in The Silver Surfer, or pure fantasy, like he's doing in Conan. I myself think that he's still great. At the height of his greatness, he's great, but I think he's less great when he's doing something conventional like The Avengers or The Fantastic Four than he is when he's doing either science fiction or fantasy. And Roy Thomas and John Buscema collaborated on and off on Conan the Barbarian forever, for just a huge amount of time. And for a long time, the set-asides that I had at the dry goods store and then at a dedicated comic shop once they started to appear included Conan. Marvel's Conan, whatever else was happening in the Defenders or Spider-Man or whatever, Marvel's Conan was almost always a must-buy for a long time. And then Marvel lost the rights to Conan. Because, of course, Marvel Comics didn't create Conan the Barbarian. Robert E. Howard did. Marvel Comics did not create Kull of Atlantis. Robert E. Howard did. Same thing with Solomon Kane, one of Robert E. Howard's lamer creations. Marvel didn't create any of those. Those belong to the Robert E. Howard estate. So the estate can lease out the franchise however they like. And you can keep it for however long you want, and then they can take it away and it moves on to somebody else. The one exception for the standard lore of Conan the Barbarian, I think you'd probably have to ask Michael K. Vaughan to get the details on this, because this is right in his bailiwick. But I think the one exception is Red Sonja, whose name occurs in a Robert E. Howard story, not a Conan story, but a Robert E. Howard story, but whose character, as a Ukrainian she-devil wearing the famous chain-metal bikini, that was Roy Thomas who thought that up. And it's a great creation. Just this raven-haired she-barbarian who is promised by a goddess that she will be undefeatable as long as she takes no man to bed. That Roy Thomas's Red Sonja is a fantastic character, and I've noticed that she doesn't come portmanteau with the others. A few years ago, Marvel Comics got back the franchise for Conan the Barbarian. They did not get back Red Sonja. They did not start coming out with the Red Sonja of their own, thankfully. Thankfully. It was bad enough where she was 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. I forget the name of the company. It might have been Dark Horse, but maybe not. Decided that they would have comic books starring Red Sonja, but they would dress her in a potato sack instead of a chainmail bikini. And we'll be getting to that. Oh, you believe me, we'll be getting to that. But Marvel got back the franchise and caused a lot of worry. For reasons that we'll be getting to, Marvel caused a lot of worry. And one of the reasons, the main reason that fans were worried, that I was worried, when Marvel got the Conan franchise, is because Conan is an incredibly unjustifiable character in our modern 21st century, blue-haired, progressive stack, censorious age. We are ruled over by school marms only a tiny bit less vengeful than the Spanish Inquisition. And a morality that's every bit as cramped. A morality that's weird and cramped. So the morality of the people who were receiving this franchise is perfectly okay with a pot-bellied, balding, bearded 50-year-old man in a sequin dress wagging his genitals in the face of a 4-year-old at a library read-along. They're perfectly okay with that. But a tall, strapping barbarian who is a thief, a reaver, and a slayer? No. No. He's going to have to work part-time at the library. He's going to have to be, in other words, Conan the CPA. That kind of gelding was done to every other comic book character, and when Marvel got the rights back to Conan, I assumed the worst. Everybody did. The Marvel Conan has some good bits to it. There was a big, elaborate storyline where a witch and her minions was deciding to gather up the power of Conan's life by going back along what we would call his timeline. And that storyline largely worked. David Wiley is a big champion of that storyline, and when he champions it in the way that I have not read it, which is collected in the book it was obviously meant to be. I have not read it that way. I was still impressed by moments in it, even during its issue-by-issue run. I wonder how I would feel if I had the book. I really should get that graphic novel, the collection of all of that whole storyline, and read it the way David Wiley does. But it doesn't matter, because after a pretty strong start and then a bumpy sequence after that, Marvel lost interest in the franchise. Michael K. Vaughan has suggested, I think, or maybe we've suggested together, that maybe the bean counters at Marvel only took that franchise to have it long enough to get out a bunch of hardcover and omnibus editions. Is that they immediately started doing that for Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Sword of Conan, the full-color comic book that Marvel did 50 years ago, and the black and white magazine that they did. They immediately started coming out with $125, $130 hardcover omnibus editions that were beautifully made, full of details. And fans immediately started buying them. You're reprinting those issues. You're adding a little bit of extra stuff. I would say that one of those issues probably cost Marvel maybe $30, maybe on the top side $50 to make. They were charging twice that much, and fans were buying them to extinction. They're all gone. You can't find them anymore. Michael K. Vaughan bought the whole run of them. I even bought one of them. I bought the first volume of The Savage Sword of Conan in that big hardcover. I didn't end up using it because those things are unbelievably unwieldy, but I did get it, even though I know those issues so well. I could recite them to you. Maybe that's the reason that Marvel wanted the franchise, was just to do that, just to make the money in the reprints, and then we don't really care. We have the right to do comic books, we'll do them, but we don't have anybody who can actually handle it, so we'll put them out. Some of the artwork was pretty good in some of those comics, and then it was gone. Then Marvel lost the franchise again. The whole time, Red Sonja has been done by somebody else. One of you will have to enlighten me. I should ask Mike what the story is there. She still has an ongoing comic book, more than one, but I don't think she was ever part of Dark Horse. I don't think she ever went to Marvel, and I don't think she's gone back to where Conan has now gone, which is Titan Books. Titan Books got the franchise to Conan. Michael K. Vaughan shared with me a rumor that Titan Books immediately started coming out with a Conan the Barbarian comic book. And I heard a rumor, I think I heard it from Mike, that they're also planning on coming out with a Savage Sword of Conan black and white magazine. I would be astounded if that happened. I'd be even more astounded if it was any good, but I'd be astounded if that happened. But they have the franchise now. And that is a very recent thing, and that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about Bound in Black Stone, the first storyline, the first 4-issue story arc of Titan Comics, Conan the Barbarian. I have the cover here of issue number 4, with a tentacle pulling Conan underwater and a skull behind him there. I have a lot to say about this run, but I want to show these 4 issues were written by Jim Zub, and they were drawn by an artist I was not familiar with, Rob De La Torre. Rob De La Torre. I wasn't familiar with Rob De La Torre's artwork. I don't think I was. But I was sure as hell familiar with the artwork that I got in these books, because the artwork I got in these books is John Buscema. He is... De La Torre is doing... Let me show you an example here. There's just a fantastic 2-page spread. Of course, when you're reading it digitally, you don't have to worry about gutter loss. You've just got the whole panel. That panel is as close to an homage to John Buscema's artwork as you can possibly get. It's beautiful. Absolutely lovely. And it runs all throughout this issue. And all 4 of these issues. That artwork runs all throughout. It's amazing, but a little bit on the eerie side. Let me show you another example here. Yeah, see, that is John Buscema, even down to the panel arrangement. That's Buscema. It's done really well. I'm not criticizing the choice. Certainly I'm familiar with comic book artists doing visual homages to artists that they're intending to honor. It's never meant as trace work, as critics have called it in the decades past. It's never meant as mockery. And Jim Zub gives us a big, opulent story. And I was worried about that story. Okay, I was looking down to brass tacks here. I was worried about that story because right away in that story is introduced a Pictish woman named, what's her name? Britta? What is her name? Here, I will get her name. Just so we know. Brissa is her name. She's a Pictish warrior woman with a spear and blue paint across her face. And the minute I saw that in Conan the Barbarian #1 from Titan Comics, my whole body seized up as though I were in the grip of tetanus. Because when I saw that, I thought I knew immediately what Jim Zub is going to do. Because the comic book industry, mainly Marvel, but also DC and Dark Horse and Titan, have been ideologically compromised. Marvel has been entirely ideologically captured. There are no holdouts. But the other companies have been compromised by a modern ideology that wants to school-marm you. It wants to lecture you. It wants to make sure you're on the quote-unquote right side of history. It does not, under any circumstances, want to entertain you. It hates you. It hates you. The buying demographic for a superhero, and we'll call Conan that for the time being, for superhero comics, is men between the ages of 35 and 65. And despite the impression that you may get from Hollywood movies or Hollywood TV shows, men in America between the ages of 35 and 65 are not 85% gay. They are not. Instead, it's 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 people are straight. So that is the very demographic that these writers hate the most. You are a de facto crypto-Nazi. They hate you. Just hate you. They hate you by your skin color, by your gender, by your sex, by your age, by your hair color, by your disposable income. They hate everything about you. Jim Zub is definitely part of that mob. And when I saw a blue-painted Pictish warrior woman, I thought I knew what I was getting. I thought I was going to get the last year of Conan the Barbarian at Marvel Comics, where Conan is a bystander and the women who don't need no man save the day, including saving his bacon. I lost track of how many times female guest stars saved Conan in the last year of Marvel's Conan. I lost track of how many times it happened. Basically, he was a guest star in his own comic, and an ineffectual one at that, a big, loutish brute. Conan is not that. But I didn't get that in that first issue and in the second. I bought both issues with Michael K Vaughan when he was here. We got them at Millionaire Picnic across the river in Cambridge, and I didn't get that. It wasn't that. There was a lot of other stuff going on, but that wasn't happening. A strong female character was there, but I know that I'm preaching to the choir to certain people here, if you know the term comic skate, but the enemy of these blue-haired ideologues who've taken over the comic book industry, those enemies never objected to strong female characters. Never. And they don't also, I should point out, they didn't also need those strong female characters to be dressed in chainmail bikinis. They never objected to strong female characters. They objected to man-hating female characters and man-hating female characters who edge out all the male characters that they have loved for 50 years. They objected to politics, not to having strong female characters. So to get that straw man out of the way. Suddenly I was getting that. With the Titan, Conan the Barbarian, I was getting that. And I was getting zombies. Because Jim Zub has Conan and Brissa and a band of their fellows fight zombies. Basically zombies. Basically flesh-eating, rabid, inhuman humans. And I didn't object. I didn't object to those first two issues. I thought, right, this is classic Conan. And De La Torre is obviously imitating John Buscema. This is clearly a welcome mat, inviting the old fans of Marvel's Conan the Barbarian, the last time the character was done perfectly, aside from Dark Horse, inviting them back, saying, look, here you go. We have a strong female character, but she is not the kind of strong female character you hate. She's the kind of strong female character that everyone loves. She's new, but she's not outdoing Conan at every turn. She's not easily dispatching every villain. She's not wisecracking. She's not making comments about mayonnaise and bigotry. She's not doing any of the things you hate. We're having her in here. So, and you've said all along that you don't have any problem with that. Well, if you were telling the truth, then you won't have any problem with that, and fans didn't. The fans didn't have any problem with Brissa. But it seemed elaborately careful. The storyline seemed elaborately careful. If I remember correctly, Michael K. Vaughan himself, his first impression with this was that this is Conan the Careful. That this is, yes, we have the franchise, and yes, we realize that Marvel largely politicized this, and we know that people loved the Dark Horse run. We're going to be really careful. We know that we don't want to go in one direction, but we also know that the mobs who will throw rocks through our windows, burn our houses down, get our names tarred and feathered with local city council, make sure that our children never work or go to school, that mob is waiting for us to turn Conan back to his roots of a thief, a reaver, and a slayer. He can't be those things either. So we're going to try and thread the middle ground. We're going to give you a Conan that you recognize, but that doesn't go too far in that brutish direction. I read those first two issues, and I was impressed by the artwork, really much so. I don't know why I didn't keep buying them. I guess it's just because I don't go to comic shops anymore. And since Mark Richardson moved from, he did the classic Mark Richardson move, he moved from an incredibly old house to an even more incredibly old house. And now his comic shop is not an easy commute for him. Used to be that I would glom onto him when he went to his comic shop, but he doesn't go to one anymore. So I would have to go to a comic shop. I would have to walk. I have to put on pants and go. And I think that's why I skipped until I realized just the other day that I could just download these things easily on a tablet. They're better to look at on a tablet anyway. I realized that just belatedly. And I've been soaking in the artwork. De La Torre is fantastic on these issues. Yes, this is an homage to John Buscema. I want to give you another example of, yeah, look at this. You might as well be looking at Buscema. Look at this. Look at this guy right here. A fellow Sumerian. That is pure Buscema. That is just amazing. It takes care to do this. I'm sure that it took care to do this. We also get some really good kills. Look at that. It's all just awesome. Now, of course, you get this when it's a green-skinned zombie. You could not get a sword thrust like that in this comic if that were a flesh and blood man. Because although the comics code as such is gone, there's still all sorts of lines of decency, lines of explicit violence and whatnot that might not be present in a Titan book, Savage Sword of Conan. Be curious to know if that rumor turns out to be true, and I'd be curious to know, if so, will there be a difference? There was a marked difference between Marvel's four-color Conan the Barbarian and their black and white Savage Sword of Conan. There was a marked difference. The Savage Sword of Conan usually felt more adult. But after a while, after those first couple of issues, I could see what Michael was saying about Conan the Careful. But it also was a really good story. It was a little bloated. I don't think that, for instance, Roy Thomas, I don't think would have needed more than an issue to do this. The bloatedness gives us a chance to see some really good visuals. There's one where we get the black stone itself that is just incredible. Yeah, look at this. Oh my. Look at here. Let me pinch and zoom here. Look at that. One eye just glaring at you like that. A thing that is carved stone, but it really looks like it's also not. That's just awesome. Next to a blood red sky. That is just great. And artwork like that runs all throughout here. And I loved that. I absolutely loved that. I reread these 4 issues for today. And it's a really, really solid story. It's really, really good. Even down to the little incidentals. That I want to harp on here. 2 in particular. One is one that I've harped on before. I sent letters myself to Marvel. One way you know when a holder of a franchise just doesn't care about it is if they make stupid little mistakes, get called on them and just leave them in place. I know, I verified with my eyes that the correction you are suggesting is correct, but I also know that you're the next best thing to a Nazi, so I'm not going to take any instruction at all from you, even when I'm making an actually legitimate factual error. Of course, I've mentioned this before when it comes to Marvel's latest run on Conan. They got the invocation wrong. All the adventures of Conan that we're getting are from the Nemedian Chronicles, and they are quoted at the beginning of every adventure. No, O Prince. And when you're saying O Prince, you're using the vocative. It's not O-H, it's just the letter O. And Marvel had it O-H, which is wrong. That is simply a mistake. It's not in Robert E. Howard. It's not in any Marvel adaptation. It's just wrong. It's just that you're so stupid. You're just a blue-haired activist, so you don't know that you could ever say O as a term of address. You don't know that exists in English, so you won't take instruction. And when you learn, well, you got to check on the progressive stack for where the person who's giving you the instruction is. If they're a neurodivergent Filipino amputee, then you would change it. If they're an old white guy, no. So they just left it. For years, they just left a mistake. And Titan Books, of course, fixes it. It's in very small print here. They fix it. So you don't have to send them that anymore. But even so, here at the beginning, we had a map of the Hyborian Age, and look at that. Ominous black hole in the middle of it. That's awesome. That's just an awesome little visual detail. That's just incredibly good. We also get something else in the conclusion to this storyline that I did not see coming. At the beginning of the story, Conan finds an enchanted sword. Basically, it's a bit eyebrow raising because Conan very much does not do that. Conan does not have MacGuffins. It's the whole point of Conan. Any sword will do. Any axe will do. Nothing has that kind of significance for him. Nothing at all. How many adventures does Conan wash up on a shore naked as the day he was born? He does not carry stuff with him. That's the whole point. So you can't give him a magic sword. You can't even give him a special sword. He's not going to keep it. He's not going to have it from adventure to adventure. I quibbled a little at that, but in this concluding issue, we learn the origin story of that, and it is, I won't spoil it for you in case you come to these issues, but it's amazing. It is amazing. It is a really, just a kind of narrative gimmick on Jim Zub's part that I did not see coming. I did not expect that he would do it. Here, let me get you another piece of action here. As Conan and his fellow Sumerian hack and slash their way out of this kingdom. Look at that. Notice, if I can just lecture for a minute here, notice the skill that's involved here. Notice De La Torre knows when to have backgrounds and when not to. Here we have just the tiniest suggestion of dust being kicked up, and the motion is all flying globs of blood. There are no other motion lines here, and you don't need them. It works perfectly. But he knows to leave the background out there to enhance the action. Whereas in something like this, where the two of them are seeing all the hordes coming toward them, it's mostly background. That is also a very good choice. It adds to the atmosphere of them being completely overwhelmed. They're suddenly small. Visual choices like that are all throughout here. That is wonderful, but I did not expect Jim Zub to give me the pure fan service twist at the end of this storyline. It's if you've read these issues, you will know what I mean when I say it's one person removed from the person I wanted as a twist, but it was still a heck of a twist. And one that I didn't see coming, even though I should have. Brissa's presence at the beginning of the storyline should have told me what was coming, but I didn't see it. Even when I was reading those first 2 issues digitally the second time, I still didn't catch it. But It doesn't matter because the whole thing ended up being really, really good. And you might be hearing some reservation in my voice when I say that. The whole thing was really, really good, but you seem to be about to say, but. And I am about to say, but. And if I were to quote from classic film to summarize the reason for my reservation, I would quote from Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. That's what I think about Titans Conan the Barbarian. It's a trap. Same way that original storyline in Marvel's last holding of the franchise was also a trap. That was it, the Red Witch, something like that. A huge, ornate storyline that was actually quite good. Was a trap. It was designed cynically and with mockery to lure in fans like me in order to teach them, in order to improve them, in order to help them be better. I can almost unconditionally guarantee that Titan will do the same thing. The whole industry has been compromised. I can almost unconditionally guarantee that maybe the next storyline, or maybe the one right after that, Conan will start to get his Cimmerian ass kicked by every woman that he meets, and also saved. Conan will start to get saved regularly by 5-foot-tall women who take charge and don't need no man. Not saved by Red Sonja, but saved by anybody. He'll start to become a brainless doofus. I don't know that this will happen. It could be that the folks at Titan are just as upset by what they've seen adapted by this character, what Marvel did to this character, what Marvel's done to all of their characters. It may be that the folks at Titan are just as mad about that as I am. And maybe behind the scenes, their editorial decision has been that absolutely won't be the Conan that we ever do. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I see a lot of reserve in this 4-issue storyline, this first 4-issue storyline. There's a lot of reserve here that I think bodes ill. I think this is a trap. I think this is the writer, Jim Zub, who hates me. He doesn't know me, but he hates what I am. He hates my demographic. He has been vocal hating that demographic. I think that some story or editorial line meeting along the line was him saying, yeah, we know what the man babies want, and we'll give them what they want for a while, and we'll gradually teach them that they could, in fact, improve as people if they would only give it a try. We'll give them a little of, the curvy ladies, and we'll even give them Buscema homage artwork. We'll even be as flagrant as that. We won't make their precious little Conan look any different. But then we'll start to change things. Sooner or later, we'll end up with Conan the Barbarian in a potato sack, like Red Sonja was for the storyline that I'm talking about. I don't know that. I don't know that will happen. Reading these first 4 issues for this pick came out of the blue for me. I assumed that Mike would keep all the Conan stuff for Cimmerian September. But it's a long way off. Cimmerian September is a long way off, and he can't do without Conan that long a time, and neither can I. So this came as a bit of a surprise, but I was also surprised by how much I enjoyed this the second time around. This is really good Conan stuff. I'm reading it mainly for the artwork, and the art was terrific. I seem to recall a rumor that the arc of stories after this has artwork by Mike Deodato, who's incredible. I'll have to look into that now, especially since I know that I can just get these issues while laying on my fat ass without going anywhere. Now that I know that, it's going to make things much easier. So I will wrap this up for now. That is your Epic Comic Book Wednesday for today. It's somebody else with the Conan franchise, and it's not bad. So far, it's not bad. We'll see what else they do. I think Mike would agree that if Titan has the rights to Conan, then they have the rights to Kull or to Solomon Lame-Ass Kane. I would assume they have the rights to those 2 characters, and maybe even Bran McMorn, as long as we're talking about Pictish warriors. They don't have Red Sonja, but are they going to do other Conan stuff? Are they doing other Conan stuff, and I just don't know about it? And what about this Savage Sword magazine? I'm interested in all of it now, especially after this reread. So that's your comic for today. We'll see what's in store for next week. Mike does the picking, so I don't know what we'll do next week. But I'll wrap this up for now, and we'll find out together. I'll see you then. Thank you.